Big Brother is watching. The Illuminati are planning to take over the world. The space aliens have arrived. Grab your hats. This is tinfoil hat time.
Welcome back to Tinfoil Hat Time. I realize I've probably grown 5,000 subscribers since I've done a Tinfoil Hat Time. So if you are new to Tinfoil Hat Time, this is the time where we discuss things that are not quite conspiracies. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. However, we're getting into some areas that's like, this is an interesting points to consider. And so Tinfoil Hat Time is all about that. And of course, we have an entire panel with us today. And so here is our panel, and we are going to be discussing the conspiracy to end all conspiracies. And we are filming live from Stonehenge. It's a very alien-infested Stonehenge, but hopefully you guys enjoy our change in scenery today. So how's everybody doing? Ben, what's going on in your world?
Not too much. Read the articles. This looks like a good one.
All right, sounds cool. Did you get a chance to watch that video too?
That I did not do.
Yeah, that is a fascinating video. We'll get to that. Dan, how's it going?
Oh, it's going okay. I didn't have a chance of, as usual, to look at the article or the video. I didn't even know where to look for it. It must have. Oh, you have it on Patreon.
I have Patreon and Think Life Media.
Yeah, and I rarely log on to Patreon, and I don't have a password that works for Think
Would it
Life.
help if I sent the articles in email earlier in the day too?
Yes.
Okay.
Or at least
do
the
that.
links to them.
Yeah, that's what I'll do. All right, Brian, how's it going your way?
Pretty good down here. I read the articles. They look really interesting. This is a topic I've been following for quite a number of years now, and I look forward to discussing it.
All right, and Quint, how's it going your way?
I have not read any of the articles or anything, but it sounds bad, whatever it is.
We'll kind of get there, I guess. But so if you're not aware of all of the weirdness going on in the YouTubosphere and all, Silicon Valley-sphere as well, there has been this call to, like, we gotta figure out what we can do to stop all these conspiracies. I mean, come on, guys. Alex Jones is here telling people they're putting weird stuff in our water that's turning all our frogs. We'll stop right there. And then you have all this kind of stuff, but it raises some interesting questions of as well of free speech. And we'll kind of end talking about a video that I saw quite a while ago. It actually ties into nutrition more than anything, and that is kind of we'll kind of get in there and talk about it. So Analog IDC, thank you very much for that super chat, my friend. Always appreciate that. Keeps the channel on and running. All right, Jess is going to make the most epic hat ever and then probably join us. So let's go ahead and jump on into our articles. And of course, I have to go. No, hold on. Where's my water fox at? I have so many windows open. So no kitty cam today. No, the reason I had to turn off the kitty cam is the computer runs really slow if you're trying to run a Hangouts through Chrome on an alpha, on a key Chrome to get my green screen running. And so it was just running so slow. Just before we started, I jumped over to Firefox, which actually makes the computer run well, but I still didn't want to risk it. All right, so let's go ahead and have a gander at some of the articles. So the first article here is from The Verge, and this kind of goes back to Shane Dawson's conspiracy theory video that he did a few weeks back. And so, of course, he's kind of just raising valid points. The same thing we're doing here, saying there's a reason these are conspiracy theories, not saying this is what it is. We're not being Alex Jones here. They're all doing all this stuff. We're not getting there. We can't make a statement of fact one way or the other. And that's the key. One way or the other. We can't make a solid statement of fact. And all Shane Dawson was doing is questioning this. But in this period of time, his video fell off monetization. And in theory, he stood to lose, tens of thousands of dollars because this bot just said, ooh, it's a conspiracy theory. Now, this video here, before we started, last I checked, it was still monetized. So I don't know if this is going to get demonetized or not, probably. But then what happens here is he's kind of talking about conspiracy theories, and it caused this whole issue because people are trying to say, you know, let's get the conspiracy theories off, and it's like, we need to stop the guys talking about the flat earth. We need to stop the guys talking about the vaccines. We need to stop the guys talking about, you know, all this different stuff. And this is really what we're going to talk to. Where does conspiracy theory go from harmless entertainment to posing a serious issue, and where does free speech incorporate into this discussion? Those are kind of the things we're going to be talking about. So do you guys have any early initial points on this subject before we dive in further?
Well, when a conspiracy theory is still a theory, it's just a theory. But when it manifests into a real conspiracy, then we have a real issue.
So what exactly do you think of would be as a real conspiracy?
It's hard to tell these days because they cloud us with a lot of deception. So until the deception is cleared, like the smoke is cleared, and you see the real conspiracy that's happening and it's brought out into the public, then we have to deal with it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right.
And that's when it becomes dangerous.
All right.
I don't know if you're following me, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, I get you. Yep. Ben?
Oh, no, the biggest problem I have with this isn't that, you know, how crazy are these conspiracy theories, or, you know, who dreamt them up, or who's talking about them, or Alex Jones with the frogs. It's if you're gonna censor these or demote them in the views or demonetize them, you've set up a system where the platforms themselves become the arbiters of what's true and not true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and I see that as the bigger danger, not like one of these articles, I think it was the Guardian article here, we'll get to in a bit, discussed, you know, the dangers to democracy and societal harm due to this stuff. Mm-hmm. But, you know, if you're going to censor it at all, you've got to start with determining, somebody's got to decide what's true.
Correct. And that's such a key point, because is it not as threatening to democracy to withhold something because you don't want it to be true? And that's kind of where we could be getting to.
Right. And then there's another issue where sometimes it's interesting, but it's relatively benign, like the flat earth. Whether or not the earth is flat, does it really affect people's lives on a day-to-day basis? But when you talk about the vaccines, there's a big recurrence of a lot of diseases that we conquered many, many years ago, but people are afraid to get the vaccines now because of everything they're hearing, and people are actually dying from these diseases. Mm-hmm. Diseases that no one has to die from because the vaccines work, and people mm-hmm. don't want to get them because they hear all these anti-vaccine people saying how evil it is, and you know, something like that. It's demonstrable in science whether or not these things occur, mm-hmm. but a lot of people get on there and they say how evil these things are, and it's actually resulting in a lot of sickness and even some death.
Mm-hmm. Good, very good. Quint?
Pretty much what Brian said about the whole vaccination thing. I don't really have anything else to add on.
All right, that's cool. All right, so the second article here from Ars Technica, Facebook, Google, and CDC under pressure to stop the anti-vaccine garbage from spreading. So this is kind of where we're going to focus in on this one. Now, of course, we have the letter here as well. This is from Adam Schiff, representing California's 28th District. He sends a letter to Google, Facebook regarding the anti-vaccine misinformation, and Pinterest has jumped down on this as well, simply saying if somebody searches for anti-vax stuff on Pinterest, they're simply not going to return any results. And this raises some interesting questions. It's like, what if I want to see those results because I want to take a balanced view? I want to parse out what might be true and what might be false in the middle of all this. So, and I've actually had several people ask me my thoughts on this. And my general thoughts personally is, and understand this, I have a doctorate in medical research. So there is definitely, to know how the immune system works and to know how a vaccine works, the theory and the practice of a vaccine is a real demonstrable thing. In science, we can demonstrate things. Now, science never proves anything. That's one of those key fundamental portions of science as a whole. It never proves anything, okay? And so with that, we have to examine it. So we understand the theory and the philosophy of vaccination. And then at the same token, what has happened, in my opinion, is we went from getting a few vaccines, you know, a dozen or so, into now kids are basically forced to get, in some places and regions, up to hundreds of them of questionable background science or necessity. And I think that this is one of those giant societal pendulums where, yeah, we have to get vaccinated for things like polio and smallpox and stuff that we understand. We have a long track record for how these go. But then we swing to the other side of the pendulum, and all of these farm companies really want to push and push and push, and these guys are profiting from it all. My biggest ultimate issue with the entire vax argument is that if we say, all right, a vaccine is mandatory for the health of our society, then a mandatory thing, the farm company cannot profit off of it. Period. Set it in legislation. You cannot, because if you cannot profit off of it, you have to develop it, sell it at cost, maybe give them 1% profit at cost. That's going to solve most of the problems, because they'll say, well, this one's really not important, so we're not going to waste our time and effort doing it. And that is a weird position, because while vaccination is a demonstrable thing, we have gone so far overboard in the name of more corporate profits and less in the name of public health. And that's, I think, what is at the heart and the core of many of the anti-vaxxers. So, Brian, what's your thought on that general stance?
I pretty much agree with what you said as far as the profit motives go, because it shouldn't really be right for companies to, you know, make mega bucks on giving people something they're mandated to do. Mm-hmm. And also you had mentioned going from a dozen or so up to hundreds, which is another issue people are facing. Yeah, there's a lot of them like polio, smallpox, where really they should be required, but, you know, because they could mean life or death. But again, hundreds, and also we need to re-examine how we're giving them. Like, I know a lot of the people I've spoken to recommend, you know, they say, yeah, we're fine with doing it, but can't you let us space it out a little more? Getting 50 vaccines all at once is a little much.
Correct.
And I agree with that.
Yeah. And coming from the toxicological standpoint, you know, what is the difference? In fact, I asked this before I entered my grad school program, because I either had the ability to go to the medical center and do a PhD MD combo, or I had the option to just do a PhD. The PhD MD combo was in pharmacology / general medicine, and just the PhD only was toxicology. So I asked the guy, what's the difference? Well, dose, you know. And the reality is, all of these individual things are studied individually, but what hasn't been studied is loading kids with hundreds and hundreds of injections at a time, because we start getting to those upper limits of toxicities. And those are what the biggest issue happens to be. Vince, you jumped in. How's it going, man? Do you got a tinfoil hat? Oh, we can't hear you, man. Yeah, we can't hear you, Vince. So we'll come back when you get your mic worked out. No, Vince, we can't hear you. All right. All right. So anyone else? Ben, Dan, Quint, you guys have any comments on this issue?
I kind of think, like you were saying, that people are scared now because they're assuming that the pharmaceutical companies want to make medicine that maintains or is a maintenance drug to certain diseases. So suppose they have a polio vaccine and they weaken it, so it only lasts 5 years. So you have to keep coming back and getting it every 5 years or something like that. And, you know, that's a concern as well, that people could be afraid also that, you know, since everybody now knows that the big pharma wants to actually just maintain diseases rather than cure them, frightens them.
Oh, I think we answered it. Oh, no, you jumped on for a second there.
I honestly think that the issue with
yeah, I think it might be a bad mic, Vince. Like, it's every now and again we're getting the audio junction, but we're not actually hearing anything from you. All right, go ahead, Quinn.
I honestly think one of the issues is the whole social media thing, like you mentioned. It's good that they are actually pushing this, and that they are not letting they're basically, like you said with Pinterest, how when you search for when you search for stuff like that, it's just not going to pop up. But there could be a bad side to this also, where it sort of restricts your freedoms of what you're allowed to post.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is
Well,
a
like
country
you're saying, how it
based on
restricts
freedoms.
But how it restricts free speech, like you were saying earlier.
Mm-hmm.
This is pretty much with all this stuff.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, what if someone just wants to know what it's like to not get vaccinated? If they want to look it up, they can't because it won't return any search results.
Yeah, so anytime we start restricting the access to information, this becomes a bad thing for society as a whole. Ben, you have thoughts on this?
On the vaccine front, I think if we get down to brass tacks, if, let's say we're talking about a really deadly disease, let's say it's smallpox, and everybody around me is getting vaccinated against smallpox, and I decide not to for any number of reasons. If I then contract that disease and die, well, that's my own fault. That's not Facebook's fault for not blocking that content that led me to not get that vaccination. That's not anybody else's problem. That's my problem.
Yeah.
So people should have the freedom to make bad choices, even if, personally, I would probably take that vaccine. But
yeah, smallpox, I'd take that vaccine, sure. That raises some issue. Hey, Jesse, how's it going?
Not too bad yourselves.
Not too bad. So you don't have any tinfoil in your house either. That's a bummer, but that's okay. It's tinfoil hat time, though. You gotta have a tinfoil hat,
I
Vince,
didn't
you
have
have your
any.
mic on yet?
Can you guys hear me now?
Oh, hey, we got you now.
Hello?
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah.
Okay. I had to unplug my headphones because I think these are phone ones, and so I think on my laptop it was detecting it's got a microphone as well. It's not working.
Yeah. All right, so do you have thoughts on the vaccination front?
I think on the whole, vaccinations are good. But yeah, I agree with the fact that they do require a lot of testing. There's been a lot of, I think, new vaccines come out recently. And I don't believe that a lot of those ones have been tested fully. Things like smallpox, polio, those vaccines have been around for such a long time that, if there's going to be any problems with them, they would have been already detected by now. As far as I'm concerned, I've got my kids vaccinated. I wouldn't go without them. There are a few optional ones that we can get here, and I'm still thinking about those ones.
Okay. Yeah, I like Brian's idea, too, of spreading it out a little bit further. Some of them, let's get all these, but then there's some of them that it's like, I have no earthly idea why you even want to do it. Like the HPV is the one that comes to mind. It is a sexually transmitted disease, all right? It's better to teach your children not to engage in risky sexual behavior than it is to vaccinate them with an unknown vaccine so the pharmaceutical company can make more money. And that's, to me, if it's something you can get by sitting on a bus next to somebody like smallpox, I'm all for vaccinating against it. Of course, outside somebody in the comments here mentioned the flu. Yeah, the flu vaccine is only about 30% effective. They literally roll the dice. The way the flu vaccine works is there's generally two different types, and they base it on some projection models as to which one is going to be around, and they pick the two most probable and put the vaccine in that, and then they push that vaccine out, and it only has a certain percentage of effectiveness. But anyone in the medical industry is required to get them. Or in my state, if you don't get them, you have to wear a face mask entirely at work. So that's kind of it. So yeah, I'm for serious vaccines, but I think we've gone too far, swung the pendulum too far, and I think that's the ultimate issue.
I remember it was not too long ago. I think I got the the HPV vaccine. And I remember the little booklet that came with it was just filled with random stock photos and basically saying that you should get this because your child is going to be much happier. You know what I mean?
Much happier by engaging in high-risk sexual behavior and not being able to get this disease.
And the HPV is also one of the ones that's been linked to some of the worst side effects.
He's back from the Bahamas. Hello, people.
Kitty.
Wow, he just flew in.
Yeah. Jesse, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Apologies for no tinfoil hat, but I didn't have any tinfoil in my house.
Oh, that's all right.
But yeah, I decided I would pop in on this one, and I'm glad some of the other panel members are here because there's some people here who are a lot smarter than me. But when it comes down to vaccines, like I'm not an anti-vaxxer, and I won't tell you to get everyone out there either. Somewhere in the middle is where you'd find me. And like my beef with it is just too many adjuvants too quickly, right?
Yep.
And the other side on the testing is, because I have done a lot of looking in that, I haven't been able to find any test on a vaccine that is against a true placebo. They always test against a vaccine-like substance, so all of the adjuvants with no actual dead or live virus in it. So if you get the same amount of reactions in both pools, well, then it's safe. But you've never actually tested those adjuvants against the placebo.
Absolutely.
At least to my knowledge.
Absolutely. Benjamin, how's it going, sir?
Good, good. How are you?
Very cool. We are wrapping up the vaccination portion. Do you have any thoughts or opinions on that?
Well, I don't know enough about the science behind all that stuff to say one way or another. I kind of agree with you, Tom, that we kind of swung the pendulum too far the other way, in the sense that, like, I don't know. I've heard pretty compelling arguments for, like, we've been dealing with a lot more new diseases since we've been getting all these vaccines. And, like, they show the data, and like, I mean, the way that they present it, maybe that's what it is. It's hard to argue with them. But what I'll say is this, is that, like, the more you censor conspiracy theorists, the more that you push them, the more people are going to believe them.
Correct.
The more people are going to say, you know, okay, they don't want me to know what this guy's saying, so he must be saying something that's true.
And that's kind of where we're going to be getting at with the final thing. Like, one good example is, if you really want to see an intriguing case of bad science, look at the studies behind Lipitor and other statins. Really, it was a conspiracy, we'll use the word, of people who all had a financial investment, who looked at all the numbers and said, well, the average person has a cholesterol level of about 190, so let's make the cutoff right about there, meaning that the average person in the population should technically be on that medicine. And what they ended up doing is developing a new type of statistics that I don't even remember the name of it, but it ends up taking a differential and then a difference of a differential to say it's a 30% increase in effectivity. In reality, it causes zero increase in, or zero decrease in heart attack, nearly zero increase in death. In fact, in many studies, things get worse. But when you start taking it, particularly here in the United States, you're supposed to have, in most other countries, like if you go to Canada, for example, and you take a statin drug, you are supposed to get coenzyme Q10 with it as well, because it depletes that particular enzyme. And the United States does not mandate that, and it causes a lot of the side effects of it, which is a lot of joint pains, memory loss, and there's been potential links to that and Alzheimer's and things like that. And to look at some of the studies. And it's an interesting concept. And the fact is that the drug is still being blocked from being made generic, and that's kind of what's happening. And that's just one of those cases of a drug that they're just selling it for the profit, which is, I think, the number one profit, and number two, I think, is still Viagra. That's
Viagra went generic.
Did it? Yeah, I think that one did. Yeah.
Well, the comment just reminded me of this, that we're all told that vaccines are 100% effective. Like, I feel like that's what everyone hears, and that's all because of marketing. That's what the pharmaceutical companies put out.
Yep. And you
got to remember, you're paying for that marketing with the vaccine or drug or whatever you're getting too.
And then when you have this situations coming out with the fentanyl case, to follow what's going on with that, we start to see that these drug companies do really bad things in the name of profit. And this is the same group of people that's behind pushing the giant vaccine thing. So I can understand where they're coming from. And I don't tell people, no, become an anti-vaxxer. That's, but I still say, just examine everything. Definitely vaccinate against any of these highly contagious diseases. And, ask several people in the medical profession their honest opinions, and maybe some researchers as well. This is one of those funny things, is that the researchers generally know more about the stuff than the doctors do, because the doctors get more of their information from the pharmaceutical companies and less of their information from the peer-reviewed literature. And so it ends up being the marketing behind the farm companies that informs the doctors what to do more often than not. Brian, would you agree to that or not?
Absolutely. The doctors usually get a lot of their information from the drug reps, we call them. The drug reps come by the doctor's office dressed super sharp, and they drop off a bunch of free samples, and every now and then bring a meal in and treat the whole staff to lunch.
And according
to
the case, the fentanyl case in New York, bring in lap dancers and.
I've never seen that personally.
Brian, I can do you one better. I was sitting in the doctor's office last week waiting to go in for my appointment, and this sharply dressed lady came in with a bag. Talked to the reception. Says, I have all this free blah 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 blah. I'd like to give to the doctor. Can I get breakfast with him one day this week?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. Right in front of the whole room full of people waiting to see the doctors.
Mm-hmm. Whenever you see someone walk into a doctor's office dressed to kill, wheeling one of those little mobile carts filled with goodies, you know it's a drug rep.
She was dressed to take somebody home.
Yep. Yep. Keith Richardson, statins cause joint pain. Yes, they do. Check your side effects. Yep. It is a well-known thing. Yep.
Sorry.
No, it's fine.
So really, when you're running a practice, though, how much time in a day do you have to read medical white papers?
Not very much.
That's
none, right?
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So, I mean, you can see it. If you want to know about drugs, you don't ask your doctor, you ask your pharmacist. That's his job.
Mm-hmm. And
right.
Maybe. I mean, they don't have a lot of time to read the white papers either. Vince? Yeah?
The thing is, I'd probably say that you've got to have some degree of trust that the doctor's not just out for the profit either. That they've taken what the rep has said with a grain of salt.
Correct.
And take the time to actually look at some of the data themselves if they're going to be responsible in what they do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the unfortunate thing, though, is that most of the data that they get is handed to them by the farm rep, and all the research was done by the farm company. Not in every case. I mean, we did, our lab that I worked in, we were working on some experimental compounds from Merck as well. So, you know, a lot of that stuff does come from independent labs. You know, they'll throw $10,000 your way to fund a study, and they'll give you the stuff. But that, I mean, they did not tell us what to report ever. You know, the stuff that I was working on. I think ours was like, compound B or something. I don't know, whatever we called it, because we don't know what it is.
Well. That's a good point as well, because research is expensive. This science is expensive, and so you still need someone to fund it. Otherwise, stuff doesn't advance.
Correct.
Yeah. As long as there are clear declarations and you get a chance to look at the raw data, then you can still make some informed decisions.
Yep. Correct.
And a lot of it depends on the doctor too, because I know what I've seen, you know, interacting with other doctors is a colleague of theirs rather than a patient. You know, a lot of doctors, they always prescribe the newest, the latest, the greatest, the most expensive. Me and a lot of the people that I know personally, you know, we go for the oldies but goodies. You know, and when a patient says, oh, how much is this going to cost? I say, don't worry, this is dirt cheap. It's been around 30 years.
Yeah.
And other doctors are prescribing what was released last week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's another valid point as well. You know, I mean, you're not opposed to the new stuff, I'm sure, as long as you've tried the old tried and true stuff first. You know,
right? Exactly. I go with the tried and true first, and then, you know, once the new stuff isn't really that new anymore and it has a track record, then maybe I'll look into prescribing that.
So let's go ahead and shift gears over here. We'll jump back to the general concept and talk about, you know, conspiracy theories and democracy. So this is that Guardian article that Ben had referenced earlier. And are we still, I gotta make sure that we're still on the video. All right. So, yeah, cannibals and aliens and clandestine lizard overlords. Thanks to algorithms, such ideas threaten the future of Europe. Guys, us reptilian aliens are not out to get Europe. I mean, that's not our task. We're not going to use, you know, we're not going to be enslaving the human race. You know, of course, I don't have the reptilian aliens on our background, on our Stonehenge background here. You know, like this one here, but you know, I have some grays hair, and that's actually some, you know, pictures of some friends of mine. You know, but you know, the reality is this going to threaten the future of Europe? So, Ben, what was your take home from this? I know you had commented on this and had some things to say about it.
Well, just like more broadly, Brian touched on this earlier, was, you know, he talked about, you know, the flat earth is, you know, this is a fun, you know, kind of harmless thing. And I think a lot of what you see on the internet is that way, where, you know, you see people bantering back and forth, you know, making bad arguments that they know are bad just to get a rise out of somebody else. And it gets to somebody who can't take a joke. Mm-hmm. And they either buy it hook, line, and sinker, and then go and tell their friends about how the earth is flat, or 1,001 other things, or, you know, it ends up, you know, being part of a news article somewhere about how the internet's gone too far and X, Y, and Z. And you moments ago, you said that you were part of the reptilian alien race. And I personally, I know that's a joke, but somewhere out there, there's going to be somebody that
disguise
thinks
my handler,
you're serious.
And, you know.
It's like that Star Trek episode where the cat was actually the handler for that guy traveling through dimensions.
That's it. I mean, this guy here is my handler. He's my alien overlord. He just takes on a good, cute kitty disguise, and I'm, you know, I was a human. I was born a human, but I converted into the reptilian alien race because the human planet's just done, man. I'm telling you.
Well, see, anyway. I personally know people who would take that and say that, oh, Tom, you sold out to the Illuminati.
Hey.
So, admittedly, I did as a younger.
Unfortunately,
it's very true. There's the Illuminati symbol right there, baby. Right there's the Illuminati symbol. I mean, come on.
Gotta represent.
That's right, and I do.
That cat turns into a real hot female when it's off camera.
Yeah. Now it's a female lizard though, so I mean, like humanoid lizardy, yes, you know, I mean, not attractive by human standards for sure, but definitely.
Hey, as long as it's female.
All right. So according to this article, 60% of Brits believe at least one conspiracy theory. The idea that a cabal of global elitists run the world, that there's a plot to replace white English natives with Muslim migrants, and that the authorities are covering up immigration numbers are among the most commonly held. Interesting. Here's the problem. What makes conspiracy go is that there is such an element of truth. And how many things were conspiracy theories before, whoops, they were kind of true? And we're kind of getting into that. Anyone else want to jump in? Dan, you want to jump in on this article?
I think you pretty much said it all. Like you said, it's a conspiracy theorist is a theory that's been developed to scare people, fearmonger and stuff like that, until someday we go, oops, it was really a conspiracy. Then it becomes to the point where it's past dangerous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's one of the things we were talking about earlier is, you know, some of them are like flat earth. So what?
Well, my cousin was showing me this article about some guys in Great Britain that found fossilized human parts from beings that were like 30 feet tall.
Yeah, you know, us people that believe in the Bible know what that is.
Yeah.
Well, I think the Bible describes giants as being like 9 or 10 feet tall. These parts are like from a person 30 feet tall.
In numbers, it says there were grasshoppers in their site. So I mean, they were pretty big.
Yeah. There were some big ones. Jesse, thoughts? Not on giants in the Bible, but on conspiracy theory affecting democracy.
Not a whole lot to add specifically to this article, but I did, as a younger man, go through a pretty good kick of going through all these conspiracy theories, and some believable and some not. Flat Earth, I don't believe in. I'll give you that one. But
what did you find? What did you find was the most believable conspiracy theory?
Most believable?
Yep.
Oh, jeez. I mean, definitely that there is a cabal that is in control of the world. I mean,
Okay.
we don't affect things really because we're not powerful. We're not smart enough to band together to move the bottom of the pyramid around. So the guys at the top of the pyramid are still controlling it. Is it really a conspiracy or not? I don't know, but it is going on.
Yeah. And what do you find is the least credible conspiracy theory?
Lizard people.
Lizard people?
Even
Man,
Ike and lizard people.
that's all right, because I can confirm, I can testify. There's lizard people, but you know.
Yeah, but on the internet, like often, if I end up in a thread where people are talking conspiracy theories on both sides, I don't care which side I argue. I'll play devil's advocate. I pick the side that's going to trigger the most people and go for it.
Oh, such a troll.
Oh yeah.
You should just have your profile picture be a troll, you know.
That's not a bad idea.
Yeah, Brian, what's your thoughts on conspiracy theories affecting democracy?
They can. Pretty intense, though. You have to distract a lot of the mainstream population to do that. Which, I mean, they're doing. You can't deny they're doing it. Just look at some of the stuff going around. But I don't know. I'm sort of...
Like they say in politics, never let a good crisis go to waste.
Like the flat earth thing, that's demonstrably disproven because we've had, spacecraft orbiting the earth. So
But those are all hoaxes.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people say, though.
Yeah, they're
Like
holograms.
I mean, you can't really believe a lot of
it.
It's
It's the Greys.
They don't have big feet down in Florida.
Yeah.
See,
We
those
have up here.
See, I've talked to the flat earthers. They think any picture that comes from space is conveniently a hox.
And I find that particularly hilarious one because it's like I was watching this one person and she's like, well, we have all these satellites. Send us pictures. So we'll send them pictures. Well, but these are hoaxes. Like, you wanted pictures. We sent you pictures. You want to say our pictures are hoaxes.
Oh, but they'll show you a picture and claim that it proves that the Earth is flat. You gotta believe their pictures.
You know, if you sit on the edge of the mountain cliff right on the outside of West Wendover in Utah and look towards Utah, you can actually see the curvature of the Earth. It is an interesting thing because the salt flats are so flat.
Well, if you buy a round the world ticket on an airplane and you can stand the ride, you'll find out the world's round.
Yeah. Absolutely. Quint, general thoughts on conspiracy theories and democracy?
I haven't really believed in many conspiracy theories. I guess the one that everybody thinks that I believe in is that Linux is better than Windows. That's the closest thing.
It's a conspiracy.
But the main one, I think it was in 8th grade. So yeah, not too long last year. We were doing a research paper and they showed us the example. They were trying to show us sites that are not credible, and the Flat Earth Society website was one. The first thing I got was like, how can people believe this? Like, if the Earth was, not only if the pictures, but if the Earth was flat, you could walk off the end of it.
Or as Ben said, Ben, what's your evidence again that the Earth's not flat?
Oh, that if it were flat, cats would have pushed everything off the edge.
Absolutely.
Well, see, what's dangerous is that they have an answer for all those things. They'll say that
I don't really follow conspiracy theories, but that one I think is the most ridiculous one. Just how could someone believe that the Earth was flat, even though it's been proven many times by scientists that it's not?
Yeah. My biggest evidence is jump onto an airline tracker and see the fact that there's 15,000 airplanes going through the sky at the entire time. That is the best evidence. I mean, that's real life, real practical stuff. There's people's family members on those planes, and you're watching. I mean, I've never really been on one of those until a friend of mine, he was still, I think he was still 16, maybe he was 17 at the time. He was flying across, over to Europe. And you better believe I stayed up all night watching to make sure his plane landed, And that's one of the things. I'm on the site and watching the airline go through the sky. Of course, it disappeared for a few hours. That was a little... Vince, what's your thoughts on democracy and conspiracy?
Well, the other night I was actually reading a really cool article about the history of the Tux penguin, and apparently somebody in Australia set him up on a weather balloon. So he was up in space, and they set him up with a camera. And in the photos, you can quite clearly see that the Earth is round. So I think that argument's settled by Tux, right? Everyone. In terms of democracy, I seriously don't think that there are enough people who believe in this crap that it's going to affect democracy. I'm more concerned about, the way that social media is being used by certain organizations to influence election results. That's more concerning. But conspiracy theories like lizard people and flat Earth, that's not going to gain enough traction.
Yeah. And Keegan the Tennessean has it all figured out. Elvis Presley still lives. He is running the deep state with Jimmy Hoffa, Tupac, and a gray alien. That is true.
I knew it.
Keegan.
I knew it.
In fact, that gray alien is a friend of mine, and he has confirmed that yes, all those guys are ruling the. They are the heads.
I haven't heard of any Elvis sightings in quite a while.
No, we haven't, because he's realized it's too dangerous to come down. So he's actually in one of those spaceships that's hovering above the atmosphere. That's actually where you'll find Elvis. He's up there. He's in the atmosphere.
Yeah, but I heard that in 2020, John Kennedy's going to run for president again.
Well, hang on. Okay. I've seen Elvis walk into my place of employment at least once a month, sometimes twice a week.
Okay. Do you have a guy named Elvis?
Well, he dresses like Elvis. He's an Elvis impersonator.
Oh, okay. There you go. See? All right. Absolutely. Of course, Synchronous tells us that Antarctica is indeed the gateway to the Hollow Earth, just so you know. That's why it's so bad down there. By the way, does anybody here on the panel know why, in their natural environment, why will a polar bear never eat a penguin?
I know.
We got Ben. We got Ben. All right. Most of you guys do. All right, somebody tell us why.
Because polar bears live on the North Pole and penguins live on the South Pole.
There you go. You'd be surprised how few people actually know that.
I remember.
In other words, penguins are not bipolar.
This is true.
I remember
I
was at the doctor's office the other day, and they had, it's the pediatrician, so they have like all this wallpaper, for all the little kids. And the room that we were in had polar bears, seals, orcas, and penguins all in one icy area. Considering it's in a pediatrician's office.
Well, but I've told people before, I'm like, polar bears don't eat penguins. They look at me like, of course they do. You're crazy. Why I'm like...
Hey, come on. We all know if we're lost at night, we follow the brightest star in the night sky because it's going to lead you north, right? Nope.
Nope.
Only thing significant about the North Star is it points to the north of the Earth. The brightest star in the night sky in the northern hemisphere, of course, Vince, is actually Sirius. But Vince, what's the brightest star in your night sky? Do you know?
I have no idea. I'm not an astronomer.
Well, at least right now it's Polaris, right?
Well, but I wonder how the fire... Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, that's the North Star right now. Doesn't it change every few 10,000 years?
I don't think so. I mean, just if the Earth's axis shifts.
The Earth circles the sun.
What's
you
that?
Think. It has to as the Earth circles
it's
the
because
sun.
It's because of how far the star is and the fact that the Earth is always there. It's it could fluctuate by as much as a fraction of a degree or so, but no, for the most part, it's always points directly there. So if you can find that star, you can always tell what direction north is. But
Well, but sometimes I wonder how the flat earthers would handle even a stream like this, because you got people on the northern hemisphere in America, and you got people like Vince in Australia, who can tell you they're seeing different stars in the night sky. How is that possible on a flat Earth? I mean,
he lives on the bottom. Opposite side of the plate.
That's right.
Well, if you live on the bottom, then does gravity work
part of the Earth, there's an edge that goes around to the other side.
Got it. Figured out. See, I never thought about the star thing, but that's like the perfect evidence too. That's actually one of there's a couple of reasons I actually want to visit Australia. One of those is to see a different night sky, and the other one is to flush a toilet and watch water go around the opposite direction.
Well, I think
I could do a live stream if you want.
Here's my favorite thing that the conspiracy theorists and flat earthers and that say when they realize they can't convince you, or at least can't convince you easily, is you just don't have an open mind.
Yeah. In fact, that's exactly, somebody left because they said we don't have open minds.
I see that.
Well, but wait a minute. Wait a minute. If we didn't have open minds, we wouldn't even be talking to you. I mean, it's like if I want to know the truth. If the Earth is the shape of a piece of pizza, I want to know. Okay? But you got to prove it to me.
If the Earth is the shape of a piece of pizza, then cut me a slice or two, would you? I mean, really.
And does that raise the question, is Vince on the bottom of the pizza or the top of the pizza with us?
That's a good question. I think by your theory, he's on the bottom. Are you on the bottom of the pizza?
Yeah, we should be able to drill a hole to Vince and send him a cable so we can hook him up direct.
That's right.
Are you guys familiar with the actual map that they use, though, where Antarctica is actually the outer ring of like the pizza, right?
Yeah, North Pole is at the center.
Yeah, it's actually rather convincing on that side. But you can demonstrate the Earth is round with 2 sticks, 2 measuring tapes, and a couple cell phones, so that you guys can take measurements in 2 places of the Earth at the same time, as long as you know the distance between them. Because if the Earth is round, you have sticks that are sticking up on alternate angles, so your angle of light will be different on both of those sticks, and you can actually measure the Earth like that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the flat earthers, they were pretty interesting because they got me thinking, like, why do I personally believe the Earth is round? Why do I personally believe that? And I had to come up with something that I can observe with my eyes, not some picture that came from NASA or whatever. And I got to thinking, duh, I saw the blood moon.
Speaking of the moon, which side of the pizza does it go around?
It's another flat plate. It goes around.
Another flat plate.
Well, did you hear the sun is a disc?
But then does that mean I have a different sun to you guys?
Yeah,
Clearly.
the sun's a big flashlight.
Yeah.
It just circles the pizza, always pointing at the center of the pizza.
No, the sun heats up the pizza.
Oh, okay. And guys,
There
we
we go.
need pizza on here because I mean,
I was just thinking
where's
that.
pizza? Pizza, where are you, man? We need
He's not really
pizza to
good
clarify
pizza
this.
expert.
I don't know. He was on earlier. I'm not sure if
I
pizza
actually,
left or not.
Tom, I forgot to tell you, I ate him for dinner.
Oh, you ate pizza for dinner? I'm sorry, pizza. Sorry, pizza. It looks like you're no longer. So the last one I want to just bring up, just an awareness of, this is actually a YouTube video, and I will encourage everybody to go and watch this video. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's just an interesting perspective. Now, this is actually a diet type video. So this is Tom Naughton, who did the documentary called Fathead. So he watched Super Size Me and it's like, this is a load of baloney. And so he did Fathead, which you can actually watch on YouTube as well. And the documentary, he really debunks pretty much the entire documentary called, what is it? I just said it. Whatever it is. Super Size Me, right? And so this is one of the lectures that he gave, though. It's called Diet, Health, and the Wisdom of Crowds, which kind of gets to this perspective and wrapping this back up with this concept of free speech. If we drop the ability to talk about this stuff, then no progress continues further. It basically kills all progress if that were to happen. Kitty moved my camera. All right. And so this video here, he goes into the old model of hearing about health and the new model of hearing about health, which some people will point to and say this is conspiracy because it's not what the doctor says. But what he's saying is that the old model is you're starting to gain a little bit more weight because as we grow, we get fatter generally. We go to the doctor tells us, go on this diet and they give us the diet, base it mostly on carbs, 2,000 to 2,500 calorie diet, eat 60% of that being carbs, 10, 20% being fat, the remainder of it being protein. And then you would go home, you'd be faithful to that, and your cholesterol still goes up, and you're not losing any weight, you're much the same, And then you go back to the doctor and he keeps rebuking you for not going on the diet. Well, the fact of the matter is that scientifically is not a good, healthy diet. All right? Because it's too much based on carbs, which means that your insulin's constantly going. But he says in this new world of social media type effects, now he doesn't, I don't think, mention Facebook specifically, maybe a couple times, but just the ability for any of us to have a camera and start talking about information, we can talk about anecdotally what happened for us, what worked best for us. And in this, he says there's a difference between, and he talks about a book called The Vision of the Anointed, where you got one professional guy and he knows all and you just have to follow him, versus learning from the crowd as a whole. And that's one of the things that he is talking about in this video. But what's fascinating about it is, if we in these social media companies, Facebook and YouTube and Pinterest and, you know, and all these companies, if these guys here all are successful at blocking things they don't want to be out there, then we all lose the wisdom of that. We lose the ability to look at that and say, that's something new. Maybe I should try that. Now, of course, this deals with health. The book in general he's quoting deals with everything. It's not related just to one. So that's kind of my thought. What do you guys think about that concept? Ben, we'll start with you.
Well, that sort of ties in with, I had one last point on the last article, but this is going to go together really nice. In the last paragraph of that Guardian article, it reads, let me pull it up, where was it? It reads, instead of focusing exclusively on the removal of extreme content and accounts, it will be necessary to regulate against harmful infrastructures and malicious behaviors. That's very similar to just blocking this sort of content.
Mm-hmm.
And what seems in both cases, they want an echo chamber of sanctioned thought.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's the dangerous part. Anytime we get an echo chamber of sanctioned thought, where has that happened before in history? Nazi Germany comes to mind.
At the risk of invoking Godwin's law.
Yeah. Benjamin, thoughts on this concept here?
Well, I think it's important to realize that, like, every scientific discovery, everything that we take for granted today, most of it started out as a crazy theory when it was suggested for the first time. Mm-hmm. And if you shut down the conversation,
like the Earth is round.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that was a controversial thing to say back then.
Yep.
But I mean, if we shut down the conversation, if we try to limit how many voices we're allowed to say, and as like some people say, you try to close the Overton window of what's allowed to be debated, you limit the progress that humanity can make. Mm-hmm. Right? That you should be focusing on more voices, more ideas, because that's how you figure out, like, okay, what's good, what's bad. I mean, how can you just make a decision if you haven't heard it all? Like.
Mm-hmm.
So
okay. Dan, thoughts?
I agree to a point that you should be able to have access to information, to stuff that is healthy for you, and the kind of things that you get in your food when you buy it and stuff like that. But to have it manipulated to the point where it can be harmful to people is just it's nonsense. It's got to be controlled.
Yeah, and that point there is unfortunately how all these algorithms start to work. Everything that goes into an algorithm falls down this rabbit hole. And I've talked about it before. Of course, there's a video today from Eli, the computer guy, about this issue of the child situation on YouTube. And with this situation, and he basically says, you know, you watch one video because you're like, well, I'm curious about this, and then your feed just gets full and full and full, and becomes this echo chamber for everything. And that's really where that manipulation comes in. So if I want to research something, to follow one of the themes we talked about here, if I want to research what anti-vaxxers are saying because I'm genuinely curious, are they just speaking insanity, or do they have any valid points? And I want to look something up and study it, I should be able to look at that and then maybe get recommended something with an opposing view. There's a thought, because
Well, good.
we learn discernment by studying both all the angles of it, but the way these algorithms work, they keep feeding us what we've already seen. And that's
Well, a good example of that is that Fairlight milk you brought up before that we were
Yeah.
talking about. You said it's the filtered milk.
Yep.
And I was telling you, I looked at the expiration date on it. It was like months out before this stuff
Yep.
went bad.
Scientifically engineered milk owned by the Coca-Cola Company.
Yeah, so I stopped buying it just because of the information you shared with me, because I take it that your information is about as good as it's going to get because you at least researched it.
Yeah, but look it up for yourself too, you know? I mean, I'm just a crazy
I
guy.
can't
in a
quite
tinfoil
get it
hat
from the
and-
cow yet.
What's that?
I can't quite get my milk from the cow yet.
I understand that. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Quinn.
I pretty much always, if I'm watching maybe something that's not related to any of my subscriptions, like if it's like a product review or something, I'm always signed out of YouTube
That's a good idea.
because I don't want a whole bunch of stuff to get into my feed. It's like related, like something not related to technology. Maybe I just want to see watch like a review on this thing. I just don't sign
Clint,
in.
I go to private browsing logged out.
Yeah.
Well, but you know what I see?
I have a cookie clearer extension, and so I'm never signed into anything.
Eat more cookies.
You know what I'll say is this: is that sunlight is the best disinfectant. And what that means is that if the anti-vaxxers, if they're crazy, if they're nuts, just let them hang themselves. Let them speak, and that'll reveal itself within time.
Yeah.
And people will start to see that if they're nuts. But if you try to ban them, if you start, you're giving them credibility by doing that. And so like people are just going to run to them, whether they're right or wrong. I mean, they might be right about some things, they might be wrong about others. We don't know because we don't even try to discuss things with them to figure out, like, maybe we can meet somewhere in the middle. But like we just try to shut them out. It's like, well,
Yeah.
I mean that's just adding credibility to them.
Jesse, final thoughts on particularly on this access to information.
Well, what I see it as a good opportunity here for an actual real conspiracy that is being created. And here's the thing. I mean, conspiracy is, by definition, an agreement to perform together an illegal, wrongful, or subversive act, right? So we have media agencies now that are colluding, more than one of them together, to censor information, to take down information, to deplatform people and restrict your access to information. Is that not conspiracy by definition?
Yeah. And
right, so they're creating
honest,
one. If they shut down the conversation, they're creating an opportunity to have more force from the conspiracy theorists, right?
Yeah, and so that kind of brings it back to that whole issue. You know, they banned Alex Jones because they didn't like what he said. So let's ban Alex Jones. Then a few more people come along, and now if you talk about anti-vaxxing in any way, shape, or form, you're going to get blocked too. I mean, maybe not banned, but that content for sure will probably get blocked. That's an interesting thing.
But you know what? The day after that Alex Jones got banned, his profits skyrocketed through the roof. His subscription skyrocketed through the roof because people flocked to him.
Yep.
Because he kept saying they're conspiring to ban me. And what they say for months, nobody's conspiring to ban you. You're crazy. And then they go ahead and ban him. They proved him right.
Yep.
Okay, so that gave him credibility, and people flocked to him, whether he's right or wrong. I mean,
yep. Brian, thoughts?
Well, a good analogy I could make, especially with a bunch of Linux people, is if you look at the computer software models, and there's a very good video that I think is still out there somewhere called The Cathedral and the Bazaar. And it's sort of,
still out.
Yep, it discusses the platform of the proprietary model of software, which is like Microsoft or Apple, where everything's in a walled garden guarded by a few people and the information can't get out, which on paper people thought was better. And then there's the Linux model, which is like your Sunday bazaar, where it's a bunch of small vendors at tables. Well, in the Linux world, it's individual people all around the world. Everything's open source. You could audit the source code. And it turned out you look at those two models in real world practice and which one is succeeding in the long term better. Even though academically, all the software people say, well, the academic model should work, you know, the cathedral. But no one thought the bizarre model should work, and yet it is. No one's in charge of it. It doesn't belong to anyone. Yet this orphan code coming out of nowhere is suddenly coming up and, you know, becoming a significant factor.
You know, Brian, what's scaring me is Tom did a video on Ubuntu yesterday, and I watched that. And if they're going to make the Ubuntu locked into snap packages only, so you can't go out and get another package and manually install it, that kind of really frightens me. That tells me that Ubuntu's going into the App Store closed-in thing that Apple and Google.
And I don't think they're doing that. I don't think they're making it exclusive. They're just making Snap the default. Apt is still there that I know of.
I was the one. How I found that is I just when I saw that you were talking about the latest Ubuntu, I just looked it up, and I found this Launchpad page. It was their Launchpad page where they have all their plans and everything. And when I looked at the blueprint section, which is the plans, I saw that was one that was approved by Mark Shuttleworth, and I thought that was crazy. Soon we'll have to do sudo snap install apt.
Yes.
My biggest concern is that they were talking about that is automatically installing all updates passively in the background. That terrifies me.
I heard about it. I watched that too. That's scary.
Vince, final thoughts on in control of information?
Yeah, from a philosophical standpoint, and being the basis of a democratic society, you do need access to all information, no matter if it's true or not true, or controversial or not controversial. But the problem is that relies on people who are listening having a certain degree of intelligence and discernment to be able to tell truth from fiction, and being able to look at the evidence and say, okay, there's evidence for this, but the evidence for the other side is not so strong, so therefore we should believe this side. And I mean, all of us here have some, a fair degree of intelligence. I can see that, and some of us here are even scientists as well. And so, people, the scientists among us will know the scientific method, where you look at a hypothesis, you gather the evidence, and then you use statistical models to actually work out whether that evidence is actually worth its weight in gold. And so, I mean, is there a need for some protection for people who are gonna be more believing, gonna be more gullible, to use a better word? For example, like in movies where they have ratings for violence or ratings for sexual content, does something need to be done to control that a little bit, but not so much so far as banning, because as we've seen, like with Alex Jones, as someone else has already said, it's putting more out there, but some degree of moderating, like you do, like what people do in chat, for example.
Well, but Vince, the problem with that comes in with who gets to decide that.
Yeah, so there needs to be some sort of fact check model.
But it can't be. I mean, it has to contain people from a variety of different backgrounds and a variety of different sources. We can't have all left-wing liberals or all right-wing conservatives. We have to have some balance in between. And I always thought the best model, you got to get to, here's your ultimate committee guy, is you got to have a left-wing liberal, a right-wing conservative. You have to have a total atheist. You need to have some religious zealot. And and then when 3 or more of those can agree, maybe we have something. You know what I mean?
Wait, is that maybe like a government? Maybe?
No, because they tend to flock together in their own insanity.
And get paid off.
Not all of them, Vince.
Yeah, I don't know. But so it is a legitimate issue. But my concern is anytime we start to say, oh, we're going to block this because we don't like what it says or something to that general effect, that becomes a problematic thing, because I want to be able to look at the information and make a decision. And,
the problem when a private company is doing that, like you said.
Well, because my own thing is that everyone has a bias, and I'm not knocking people for having biases. I'm knocking people for claiming that they don't have a bias. I mean, if you have a bias, be honest about what your bias is, so I can know what the filters that this information is going through, and I can parse it out correctly. That's all I ask of people. Just be honest about your bias is all.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the thing is that the story that I always go back to, when I became a Christian and I didn't know any better, I was given a variety of different resources from different people, and some of those teachings seriously conflicted. And having access to all of the information allowed me to read this guy's thoughts, understand that as a person saying I'm a Christian, I want to completely agree with what the Bible says. So whose teaching lined up with that book better? Having access to all the information was able to show me what is right and what is not. And that's what we have to have. Now, the danger here is that what is that ultimate standard? As a Christian, I hold to a degree of an ultimate standard, whereas you may not necessarily hold to that, in the rest of the secular world. But, and frankly, there's nothing about, reptilian aliens or vaccines or anything else in the Bible. So, but we have to understand ultimately science is not set in stone and science doesn't prove much of anything. And we have to understand that science oftentimes can be very wrong. And so to say we're banning all of this argument because science has said otherwise, that's a problematic thing for me. Because science, how many times do we find that science, didn't actually say that? Really? Like, how many eggs are safe to eat? Well, it depends upon which era you were in. Pre-50s, hey, eat all the eggs you want. 60s, 70s, don't have any. And then later, you can have up to one. And now they're perfectly fine again. All of this is based on science. So science evolves as well, and
in the mechanics business, we called it works on paper.
Say that again?
Well, I mean,
in the mechanic business, they say it worked on paper.
Yeah, there you go. All right,
I mean, science is all about scrutiny and criticism, right? Like us round earthers, we should welcome the flat earthers because we know that we have the truth in it. The truth is not afraid of criticism, because we know that the truth is going to stand tall, right? And I think that anybody who tries to silence like an opposing view, like they're not that confident in their own position. Like if they think it's not going to stand up to criticism or whatnot, I mean, it's all about questioning things. Like, I mean, how many times do we think something was true? One person comes along, questions it, and all of a sudden, boom, that becomes the new standard because we found it to be true.
Yeah. All right. I think what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and wrap this off. For those interested in the Christian perspective of things, I will be doing another Christian live stream tonight at 9 o'clock. That is about an hour from now, and I will put the link in here now. We are going to be talking about the Jussie Smollett arrest. What does that have to do with the Bible? Well, you'll see. But we're going to talk about Jussie Smollett and that whole storm of insanity. I don't know what else to say. So that'll be at 9 o'clock Eastern time, so right about an hour from now.
I only know what I've learned from memes about that situation.
Well, memes are probably more accurate than the original news reporting came out about. So,
well, I trust a meme before I trust CNN. So,
yeah, isn't that funny?
Conspiracy theorist.
Yeah, is that Conspiracy News Network? Is that?
All right, Ben, like our news nowadays is all put together by a think tank to dream up what to tell the people.
Hey, I got the facts.
That's right. That's right. What was that quote from V for Vendetta? It's not our job to make up the news. That's the government's job. It's just our job to report it. Something like that.
Yeah.
Ben, final thoughts on this topic.
Well, with all this stuff, I mean, you should have the freedom, and by most accounts, everybody here, I hope, has the freedom to have incorrect thoughts, and hopefully you get you should let other people have them too. If you want to shine the light on someone else's crazy, that's completely fine. We should do that. Not use the mechanics of government and platforms to remove people from them because you don't like what they have to say.
Mm-hmm. But I don't like that, so I'm going to block you now. No kidding. Benjamin, final thoughts.
Everybody should go pick up a copy of The Cathedral and the Bazaar. That is an awesome book.
Okay, that sounds
I
like a
have
good
not
one.
read it. I need to read it. I have read I think it's Just for Fun. That's the book about Linus Torvalds. That's next on my list.
Let me see if I can find that book here. While I'm looking for that, Benjamin. Actually, Ben, what's the name of that book one more time?
The Cathedral and the Bazaar. That was Eric Raymond.
Mm-hmm. That's a required video for all of my Linux students.
Just for Fun is a biography of Linus Torvalds. It's pretty good. It tells a lot about the early days of Linux.
Okay. Benjamin, final thoughts.
Well, I'm not going to say that I reject every conspiracy theory. I believe what can be documented and proven. Like, for example, I believe Operation Northwoods. Why? Because I can look up the document and read it. That being said, I'm not going to just because somebody brings that up, that doesn't mean I'm a believer when he says that the Earth is flat and like the Antarctica is this giant ice wall and like the military's guarding it. I mean, there's not enough manpower to do that. I mean, simple logic and reasoning and documentation will guide you to like where you want to go, where the truth is. But you have to look at things objectively, and I think that, like, you know, freedom of speech is very important, you know, opening it up to ideas, you know, because like I said, sunlight is at best disinfectant. If somebody over here is a racist, I want to hear from them. Why? Because I want them to hang themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Our own testimony. By his own testimony.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dan, what's your thoughts? Final thoughts?
Well, as for the Earth being flat, statements like that would go right through me because I do believe the world is round. There's enough evidence out there that over my lifetime has been collected in my mind that it can't be anything else but round. So I'd let something like that go directly through me. I wouldn't raise a big fuss about it because the other guy's probably wanting attention over it, and I'm not going to give him the attention. Now, if there's something that pops up that's I don't know much about, it might stick and I might hold on to it. I might research it. I might come back and I'll hear some more about it at a later date and then research it. But something that's new that I haven't heard about before, I'm not going to dismiss so quickly.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And that's how I basically treat information as it comes along, you know, without me looking for it.
Okay. Jesse, final thoughts.
Nothing major to add, but basically I agree with everything that Ben had just said anyway. I mean, I don't mind the idea of entertaining conversations on conspiracy theories. I love the idea of actually looking into them and understanding other people's thoughts and working together to find what evidence can actually be proven, right? And I love that sunlight detergent ad placement you keep putting in there. I don't think he gets it, but anyway. Yeah, no, not much else to add anyway.
All right. Brian.
I like the sunlight analogy also. It's excellent. And again, I don't think you ought to weaponize government to be controlling of anything, because then you're on a slippery slope. People ought to be able to say what they want to say. For those that are confident in themselves and have the truth on their side, we don't mind hearing the other people because we could rebut what they say. If people want to shut us down, it probably means they're not that confident because they're afraid of what we might have to say. So again, let the truth come out. Let reasonable people think for themselves. The only issue with that is a lot of people don't think things through and they'll jump to the wrong conclusion. But that can't be helped. Humanity is what humanity is.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Quint, final thoughts.
A lot of this stuff is just crazy. I have to say, like pretty much everything on a tinfoil hat time. But but anyway, a lot of these conspiracy theories are just plain stupid. Like, who would believe the Earth is flat here? Raise your hand.
Oh,
There's a
definitely.
whole
Hey,
society.
I've flown above the Earth. I know it's as flat as the pizza dish.
But thing is, I think the content restriction is the biggest thing, because one of the things I heard is that I watched this guy who does a lot of reviews on networking and like Ubiquity and PF Sense, and he didn't want to do any videos on Pi-hole because his whole channel would get demonetized if YouTube found about it.
Why?
I know that's what he said. He said that YouTube pretty much likes to demonetize channels that do videos on ad blocking.
Fun.
And so just when you have, especially monetization, I feel like is one of those things that comes into play with stuff like this, where you can only talk about certain stuff. Like I know a lot of Tom's videos get demonetized.
I'd be really surprised if this one's still monetized.
But a lot of them do, and that's because you talk about all the stuff that we need to know about. I feel like the monetization only comes into stuff that YouTube wants you to know.
File.
Yeah.
They want you to know.
Yeah. And that's why I have merch, shop.switchedtolinux.com. I have Patreon, patreon.com/TomM, and my own personal support, which is thinklifemedia.com.
I don't know why this guy was so scared of it. He has like a whole like networking business and everything.
Yeah, that's weird.
I don't know.
We're living in a Truman-type show world. Yeah, you know.
Like, what if YouTube blocked me, for example, for posting a video on how I got Google Fiber running without the network box? Because Google says that all residential customers are apparently required to use the network box for Google Fiber.
Well, Quint, and any platform has the right to ban any speech they have. It's their platform. It's their private company. What they don't get to do is give you a contract that says you're free to say what you want and then flip on it later on down the road.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the biggest issue.
That, though, does raise another question. I don't want to dive into it too far so we can wrap this up, but at what point in time does a platform become such a public sphere to talk that it no longer is a private platform? And that's a legitimate question. You know, at what point in time can I say, you know what, everyone is using this? Like Twitter. It's like the only way the president of the United States communicates with anybody is through Twitter. At what point in time do we say, you know what, Twitter's not a private company that gets to decide what they're doing? It raises a fascinating question anyway.
Well, I think that like, while, I mean, as long as they don't, and I know they're guilty of this, that hasn't escaped me, but I think that the fact that they actively try to push down and ban competing companies, I think that's when you can say, like, there's a problem here. This is not a free market. This is not capitalism going on here. This is a monopoly. It's corporatism. It's crony capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I think that we have the issue. It's no longer freedom of speech. They're no longer a private company. And I think that's where people are having the issue.
Yeah.
I'm quite an advocate for private property rights. So I take the other side of the fence. And the only way that it's no longer a private platform is when the government buys it.
Okay. And that's a valid argument, too. Vince, what's your final thoughts on all this?
I think we've proven well and truly today that conspiracy theories are actually quite entertaining. So I welcome that.
Yes.
In any debate, I think it's important to have a thick skin. So by all means, listen to all the views and listen to everybody and listen to all the evidence, because that's essentially how you can make an informed decision and grow. Mm-hmm. But have some discernment about it, have some intelligence about it, so that a lot of the crazy theories don't really see too much of the sunlight, as Ben calls it, so to speak. But definitely, I don't think that entities should be limiting the amount of information that's out there. I think that's a dangerous precedent.
I'm gonna try and get the kitty up here for some kitty treats. Come on, buddy.
Well, Jesse, I should probably clarify my position. I'm a libertarian, man. I believe in private property rights. But when you actively try to shut down competition, and they have done this, they have lobbied public officials to shut down like MeWe and stuff and things like that. And so like when you're actively trying to shut down competition, that's no longer a private company. That's no longer like
They're acting more like a utility at that point.
Yeah.
yeah, but they're also acting like I mean, it's like I said, it's crony capitalism. It's not capitalism, and like a lot of people conflate the two. They think it's the same thing, and they're just not the same thing.
Yeah, it's like we're going to spend X million dollars to go crush this other company so they can't even start up.
Yeah, and I mean that's not a free market. I mean, come on.
No, it isn't.
It's like
I'm with you 100%.
I mean, I think the solution is simple. No, just ban lobbying. Make lobbying illegal.
Agree, and I think that's kind of one of the problems with our system of governance as a whole is that it's all about the money, and it's pushed. The agenda is pushed with the money. It's not pushed as a true democracy.
Yeah, the politicians are bought and paid for by companies.
I think that politicians should be forced to wear NASCAR uniforms, because that way they have to wear the logos of everyone that's bought them.
Yeah, that would be a neat bill to put into place. All right. Well, we just fed the kitty, and so we are going to go ahead and wrap this up. Don't forget, I will be streaming at 9 o'clock, which is now just a little over 1 hour, or excuse me, a little over a half hour from now. Here's, oh, I'm sorry, that was the link to the whole channel. Copy link address. Let me put the link to the video itself in there. So if you want to watch me over there, we'll be talking about this Jussie Smollett issue, and that's the Christian Perspective channel. So if you're not into that kind of stuff, or if you just want to come along for a debate or hear some crazy conspiracy theorists talk about Jesus or something, go check it out. But anyway, thanks for coming along on this one, the conspiracy to end all conspiracies. Thanks for coming along, guys, and we will catch you later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
See you.
Bye-bye.
Ciao, guys.
Night, guys.